International journalists have been caught in the crossfire in Syria while covering the army's operations outside the capital. The forces have been trying to clear the area from the rebels occupying pockets of the city of Daraya. Members of RT's Arabic team found themselves amid heavy gunfire. Correspondent Kamel Sakher suffered light injuries while trying to escape. Here is his account of the events.
We arrived at the Damascus suburb early in the morning to report on the Syrian army operation. We were moving from street to street, and when we reached the dock, my colleagues and I got caught in crossfire. We tried to escape, running one after another, fearing that armed rebels would notice us. A Syrian army soldier accompanied us the entire time. He constantly kept his eye on the situation and helped us to escape the gunfire. The rebels were firing on us. My colleagues and I were wearing bulletproof vests with the word press on them. The firing was very intense and it was difficult to find shelter. I ran and fell down. I hurt my arms, but the Syrian army doctors gave me first aid on the scene, so I could continue to do my job. There were many other correspondents there with me, including Iranians and Syrians. One of the Syrian cameramen was also slightly wounded like me.
Now, for more analysis, I'm joined by Russ Baker, U.S. journalist and filmmaker. Thank you very much for being with us. Now, according to recent studies, Syria was the most dangerous country for journalists last year, with over 30 correspondents killed while covering the conflict. How is it possible to make their work safer there?
Well, I've covered a few dangerous situations myself over the years, and the reality is there is no way to be safe in wartime. The basic thing that we are doing there is we're providing a kind of a gritty texture to the average person so they can kind of sort of experience it from afar. It's just inherently dangerous. Unfortunately, I now consider a lot of combat coverage to be sort of in the realm of entertainment. And what I mean by that is it doesn't really provide people with any kind of great insight into what really is going on, because you're only in a particular spot and you're only experiencing a kind of a representative experience that a soldier who is there might be having at that particular time. So I think that news organizations go in with their eyes open and realize that it's going to be very, very dangerous. And if they experience casualties, it's tragic, but it's part of the business.
Now, one particular organization, being RT, we are kind of worried about this. A member of the Syrian opposition coalition previously said that Russians in Syria are legitimate targets, claiming that they are cooperating with enemy forces. Does that mean that our colleagues could have been deliberately targeted by rebels?
Listen, anything is possible. I mean, the reality is that very, very few news organizations are seen as truly objective or open-minded. Most news organizations have owners and sponsors and related to countries and so forth, and are seen as having some sort of perhaps a bias. And I suppose that just as people from RT may be seen as in some way skeptical of the rebels, American journalists are going to face the opposite kind of thing. So that, I think the very fact that we're perceived that way increases the danger to ourselves. If it were that both sides were able to truly see us as being as open-minded as possible, I think that would be very, very helpful.
Now, continuing on this theme, many international journalists are reported missing or have been detained in Syria. One of them was Ukrainian Anhar Kochenyova, who was kidnapped by the Free Syrian Army. Why is there no condemnation of such cases from the world powers who back the opposition?
Yeah, I mean, this is a general problem that all journalists have to be treated alike, and we've got to have some kind of standardization of the criteria. But listen, war is a game of propaganda, and unfortunately, there's very little context to any of this. And so, yeah, I mean, we're all in a sense pawns, and it's not really a game that I care to play.
Now, moving on to the situation in Syria itself, from your experience as a war correspondent, there have been reports of car bomb explosions at a gas station in Damascus just a few hours ago. There hasn't been really information on release of what could be behind these types of incidents. What's your take?
Well, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of, in the way of covert operations, sponsored by outside parties that have a stake in hastening some sort of a resolution of the situation. There's no question, and this is pretty obvious on the surface, that Western countries, including my own, have stepped up their involvement and want to get Assad out as fast as possible. And these are the sorts of things that we've seen historically, going all the way back to the coup in Guatemala in the 1950s and in Iran and so forth. These sorts of provocations are very, very common. I think we're going to see them increase until something or other is resolved there.
And briefly, the bloodshed has been going on for 22 months now. Any possibility of resolving it, or has it reached a point of no return?
Well, I'm sorry to say that I think that there is no middle ground there. I do think that probably if enough time elapsed, that Assad could be convinced to either leave or to put in some kind of a coalition. But pretty clearly, I think the Western countries don't want any kind of halfway measures. They want him out entirely. And I think he is not going to do that until the last possible moment, if he sees a way for himself to leave and end up in some kind of a safe exile abroad.
All right. Appreciate your thoughts on the subject. Russ Baker, U.S. journalist and filmmaker, thank you very much for your thoughts.
Thank you.